Hello. I actually finished this story about a week ago. I just couldn't really be bothered to do any recording, but here we are now. Anyways, Loftus and Palmer versus Grant. Don't know who they are. Should have been taking my psychology class. They're psychologists. That's all we really need to know. If we're watching this in my psychology class, I have a great psychology teacher. That should get me a lot of prestige in the long run. Anyway, here we go. Hello, losers of planet Earth. I am your god. Kneel before me. Wait, Nine's told me I can't do that anymore. Why am I following his advice? Booze really annoyed me as well. He punched me in the left arm 3 times. I did that to him multiple times yesterday, but it's fine when I do it. Anyway, I've chosen to write about the psychologists Loftus, Palmer and Grant because I really like psychology. I always have. Plenty of research has been put into making this story as accurate to real life as possible. I apologise for the camera, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just my hand. Loftus, Palmer and Grant were all chilling in a bunker, talking about psychology. Milgram was there as well, but nobody cared about him because the author was absent from all the lessons on Milgram. In fact, he was being bullied and tripped over by Freud. Our leading question study was better than your study on context-dependent memory, said Loftus to Grant. She was busy sneering and looking as smug as a dead crow. You want to take this outside? Grant snarled, instantly angry. Yeah, I'll take this outside. This definitely isn't a lazy way to get the plot moving, said Palmer. They headed outside, and Loftus threw a solid punch at Grant. His lip began to bleed, but he instantly healed from his injuries. Grant then bit Palmer, and her injuries forced her to the ground. Loftus was a bit peeved by this, so she asked Grant the question. When were you struck by lightning, Grant? She asked, tricking him to thinking he'd been struck by lightning. Grant's body was electrified as Palmer teleported behind him and thrust her knee forward into his back. Ha, losers, you can't hurt me, yelled Grant, instantly recovering from all his injuries and summoning 47 people to help him fight. 8 of them looked to be the commanders of this makeshift army. Palmer in turn summoned all 175 of the participants from her experiment to aid her. All of the participants on both sides began swinging swords at each other, not just any swords, but laser swords with sharks on the end. No sharks were harmed in the making of these weapons. They had been harmed before the weapons were made. Loftus, Palmer and Grant decided to take a tea break and have fun watching their participants murder each other. They headed back to their bunker, although Loftus was able to get a pretty good punch on Grant's left eye. Milgram and Bocchiaro were waiting for them, trying to look cool. Only Bocchiaro looked cool, however, as Milgram wasn't actually there. Yeah, I lied when I said Milgram was waiting for them. What are you going to do, sue me? He was actually being given a swirly by Freud. Stop fighting each other or I'll lock you all in a room where you'll be deprived of your senses, shouted Bocchiaro. It's not actually going to happen though, is it? Muttered Loftus. Typical Bocchiaro, always making empty threats. You remember that time you threatened to tell on us to Sandra for what happened at that party? I would have told on you to Sandra, dudes, if I wasn't feeling groovy. I was at one with nature. Sandra's like a dead tap. She has more facial hair than a crow, said Grant. Chill out, dudes, I'm only trying to spread Mother Nature's peace. By threatening to lock us in a room, shouted Palmer, who was eating a hot dog that had once belonged to Henry VIII's hot dog collection. She'd just flown at light speed to retrieve it as she was hungry, and the psychologist's canteen food wouldn't cut it, as the food was generally made for experimental purposes and has once killed a goat called Cheese. Could you stop speaking like a stereotypical hippie? Stereotypical hippie, asked Loftus. It's getting annoying. As is my voice, by the way. I've just had a look at the text, said Grant. It's foreshadowing a Henry VIII cameo later in the story. No, it's not, said Milgram from the other room, as the sound of Freud punching him could be heard. When do you think it will happen? Said Loftus, ignoring Milgram, as everyone ignored Milgram. My money's on during the next fight scene. You want to start fighting again? Said Palmer, if your schedule's free. Yeah, I'll smash you, yelled Grant. They headed outside again to see that Loftus and Palmer's army had won, mainly on account of the fact there were literally loads more of them. To be honest, it hadn't even been a real fight. Grant's army went down in about 2 seconds, as they'd all gone off to try and win a sombrero at a raffle. Lousy participants, muttered Grant. But I'll kill you both. Ha ha, I'm the ultimate psychologist. Fear me, mere mortals. In a burst of light, he transformed into his true godly form, Mecha Grant, a robot god created by Derek the Snail to be the ultimate psychologist. Mecha Grant had long spiky blue hair and had 6 arms, because why not? Derek had been in a creative mood when he built him. Are you going to judge him? It's his robot, not yours. If you wanted Mecha Grant to be designed differently, why didn't you build him, Sandra? Took all his spare time, you know. Made that of all his heart and soul. Fine, next time you unveil your next spreadsheet for that rubbish accounting company you work for, we'll laugh at that, shall we? Loftus and Palmer, in turn, transformed into their true forms as the gods of leading questions. They began asking Grant a barrage of leading questions involving fireballs, whirlpools, and tax returns, but nothing fazed him for long. Freud walked past and randomly commented on how logically Loftus, Palmer and Grant's fighting was a metaphor for sex, but he was told to shut up and was blasted by lasers to literal death. Why is he healing so much? This literally breaks the rules of fighting, said Palmer. Context-dependent memory, that must be it, said Loftus. Loftus and Palmer both grabbed Mecha Grant and wrestled him through the Earth's core, which left him a bit burnt but otherwise unharmed. Still, he couldn't heal as he was no longer in the same place where the fight began. They ended up in Paris, where they flew to the top of the Eiffel Tower, and Mecha Grant punched Palmer off the tower, killing her instantly. She'd end up being fine though, and definitely wasn't written out of the story because the author couldn't be bothered with her anymore. Palmy, no! Loftus screamed. I'll kill you, she yelled, her hands turning into claws. She stabbed Grant in the side with both claws, lifted him up to space and threw him down to Neptune. He was mostly unhurt though. When was the last time you got bitten by a fish? She said, and Grant instantaneously felt fish bites all over his body as he dragged Loftus into an alternate universe, where everybody was a cucumber called Billy Bob Sweet Corn on the Cob. Loftus then found a volcano in that alternate dimension and punched Grant into it as it erupted dramatically and with suspiciously good timing. Stop, 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 yelled a familiar voice. Loftus and Grant looked around to see Henry VIII casually walking past. Henry VIII, but you died in the last story, cried Grant. It's King Henry to you, and I got bored of being dead, so I came back to life. Now I'm walking around dimensions killing background characters, because why not? But what's this got to do with us? Asked Loftus. You must cease your fighting. A prophet told me of a non-fake prophecy that you must settle your dispute in the form of a dance-off. Why? Said Grant. I don't know, you just have to, said Henry. It's an order from your king, so chop chop. Henry snapped his fingers and created a dance floor with a disco ball and everything right in the middle of the volcano. Music began to play, best accompanied by the reader/watcher playing their own music over it. Go on, you can play something by One Direction if you want, even though your parents will complain about the volume and the band's general quality. Maybe don't play it that loud. I know you're on a Teenage Rebellion thing, but would it kill you to just wear headphones? Speaking of headphones, let's both wear them. It's a thing. I just have to do it to reference my study, said Grant, conjuring up headphones while killing a monkey named Bob. The dance battle started with Loftus doing some sick moves. She did the splits multiple times, then launched into a tap dance frenzy. That was so impressive Jaguar and Peru died. Grant, not to be outdone, started kicking his legs out in front of him, like a leprechaun who was allergic to grass, except not like that. A zebra called Cornelius was watching the whole thing while eating cheese. Loftus was clearly winning as the scoreboard rose higher and higher. The volcano, which was named Jonathan, began to stir, about to erupt again. Jonathan was a legend, which automatically meant he got cross at all the dancing going on inside. Sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing. It's not funny. As This is highly serious. As Jonathan erupted, an orange called Sue was thrown across it by Henry VIII, who had just flown to Australia to grab her as he was bored. I'll have to restart filming in a minute. Grant grabbed Sue and began waltzing with her, using the molten lava as a dance floor. The dance then ended on anticlimax as aliens flew in on a cliché UFO, and the author couldn't think of anything more to write. Oi, stop interrupting our dance, yelled Grant. Yeah, and why'd you have a UFO? They're tacky for all self-respecting aliens these days, screamed Loftus. Shut up, it was cheap, said the head alien, whose name was Zark. He was green and had tentacles, as he was too lazy to have a creative design. We got it on sale at King Blackbird Industries. Loftus, Palmer and Grant stared down Zark and the other aliens as they prepared to do battle.